If someone had told me that 6 months ago, I might have smiled, faintly, the way you do when a truth wears a joke's disguise. But it didn't arrive in a crash. There was no sharp edge or signal. It came quiet, slow, like fog creeping in under the door. You don't see it until the room has changed around you. My name is Emma. I'm 36. I live in Minnesota in a 3-bedroom home with white siding and a porch swing that barely creaks. I have a steady marriage, a kitchen that smells like thyme and soap, a husband who speaks softly, works hard, and keeps the floors clean, and a life that feels more like a habit than a choice I still remember making. Tom is my husband. Contractor. Steady. Calm. He fixes the hinges before they squeak. He walks like he knows the floor is his. People like that, they always have. So did I think. Or maybe I just needed someone who could bear my weight without shaking. And Dylan. 19. Tom's son from a past I never entered. My stepson. But only by word. I never say it aloud. Never like it belongs to either of us. When I met Tom, Dylan was 12. All knees and silence. He came by in halves half the time, half the smile. I didn't try to shape him. I just stayed still. Left food on the counter. Let him drift past the edge of the room like he belonged and didn't. I didn't see him grow. I saw him grown. Now he's taller than Tom. Built from angles. Still quiet, but not lost in it. He wears it like it's his. Like silence is something he earns. Last fall I noticed. Really noticed. He stepped into the kitchen, shirt damp from work. Barefoot. Half asleep. I asked if he wanted coffee. He didn't answer, just reached past me for the mug. And in that moment, brief, still, he felt human. Just human. Then it passed. And I let it. The three of us live here, Tom, Dylan, me. Like moons that never collide. Close. Careful. Distant. Tom runs on rhythm. Wakes at 6. Toast. Coffee. Kiss on my cheek. Gone. I keep the rest moving. Lists, ledgers, quiet drawers. My days are built from tasks and absence. I don't break down. I don't raise my voice. I sort. I fold. I label things. Sometimes when Tom touches my shoulder, I flinch a little late. I smile the way you do when the script still fits, but the scene's already ended. I don't know when Dylan's gaze started to hold instead of pass. Maybe it always did. Maybe I was the last to see it. It was in the small things. When he carried in groceries without asking. When he leaned in and held still longer than needed. When his voice stayed low even after the question was gone. Each moment was quiet, but it landed like thunder. I remember waking before dawn. The house barely breathing. Tom was gone. I stood by the window, coffee cooling in my hands. Dylan entered, hair damp, shoulders squared. He asked if I'd slept. I said no. He filled a glass, leaned on the counter, and waited. He looked at me not like I was tired. Like I was real. I broke the glance. Pretended to clean what didn't need cleaning. He said nothing, and yet it stayed. When he leaned down beside me, not too close, not too far, I felt something shift in the air. It was like a draft through a door I hadn't meant to leave open. I held my breath. So did he. Neither of us spoke. Then he stood, cleared his throat, and left. I didn't sleep that night. By the 6th day, the energy between us had changed. No words, but unmistakable. He lingered longer at dinner. His smile came slower when I joked about Tom's odd routines. When he passed the salt, our hands touched and neither of us flinched. We talked more, but stayed at the surface. Little things. Safe things. I don't remember the words. Only how carefully he listened. I told myself I was imagining it. Until the storm came. That night, The sky split open like something had finally broken. Wind shook the walls. Rain struck like fists. And then everything went black. No light. No sound but the storm. I was in the kitchen, fumbling for candles, when he appeared, flashlight in hand, calm like always. "You okay?" I nodded, too fast. He stepped closer. "Don't move. There's glass on the floor." I hadn't noticed. He took my hand, steady, and led me back to the hallway. We ended up in the living room, lit only by candlelight. Thunder rolled above us like an old memory. I tried to laugh. "Well, this is cozy." He didn't laugh. His eyes met mine not directly, but just beside, as if he was waiting for me to speak first. "I'll check the breaker," he said. Then he left. And I stayed, heart racing, thoughts louder than the wind. The lights stayed out, longer than they had to. He said it was simple. Just needed time. Then he lit more candles and placed them carefully like a ritual. The room softened. The silence grew deep. We sat far apart. I wrapped myself in a blanket I didn't need. He stared into the flame like it might give him answers. "You don't like storms," he said. I nodded. "I used to hide in the basement during them," I said. "As a kid." He looked at me. "Why?" The walls felt thick, like nothing could reach me. He was quiet, but the silence was different now. Heard. Held. The next morning, power returned. The clock blinked like the night hadn't happened, but I had changed. I moved through the kitchen like I was walking through someone else's morning. Still hearing his voice in my head. Still remembering how he had made tea I hadn't asked for. Still thinking about how he looked at me when I took it. That day, I stayed busy. Cleaned what was already clean. Went out even though we didn't need anything. When I came back, he was outside. Fixing something. Focused. Calm. I paused at the window longer than I meant to. Then walked away. He came in at sunset. Quiet again. He offered to cook. I said yes. Dinner was simple. No music. No laughter. Just forks and time. I asked about his friends. He said they drifted. I asked about someone he used to see. He said it ended. "You don't talk much about yourself," he said. I looked up. "What do you mean?" "You ask questions, but don't answer any." I hesitated. "I guess I don't think there's much to say." "You really believe that?" The questions settled deep. That night, I didn't sleep again. I lay there, eyes open, remembering the way he had looked at me. Not like a child looks at a parent. Not like a stranger, either. I got up, went for water, and saw him in the hallway. He didn't speak. He didn't move. I paused. He nodded once, and disappeared into the dark. I stood there a long time, listening to silence I didn't know how to name. We cooked side by side. Watched a movie without really watching. He fixed the drawer in the bathroom I'd stopped noticing was broken. I asked if he was sleeping well. He said, "Not really," and left it there. On the 5th day, the air shifted. I sat at the edge of the couch, pressing my hand to the back of my neck. The ache had been there for days. He paused in the doorway. "Want help?" I didn't look at him, just nodded once. He stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough to feel his presence behind me. His voice was quiet. "Breathe." And I did. He didn't touch me, not really. Just hovered near, letting the silence do the rest. I could feel how careful everything had become. Measured. Unnamed. Then he stepped back. "I'm gonna shower," he said. I couldn't speak. Not because I was afraid. Because I didn't know what I'd say. The next morning, I put on lipstick. I told myself it was routine. That I wanted to feel awake. But when I saw the way his gaze flicked briefly to my mouth and then away, I knew I had told myself a story. We spoke less after that. But everything between us got louder. I noticed the way he leaned on the counter. The way he drummed his fingers when he was thinking. The way he said my name like it weighed more than before. And I started waking up earlier, just to hear movement downstairs. Just to know I wasn't alone in the house. The storm returned on Thursday. Not wild, just steady. The kind of storm that doesn't shout, but insists. Then the power cut out again. Not again, I said, mostly to myself. He appeared beside me with a flashlight. You okay? I nodded. Too fast. He didn't believe me, but didn't press. I'll check it. I followed. In the basement, he moved with purpose. Toolbox. Breaker panel. Quiet focus. It's probably simple, he said, but might take a minute. Do you want me to? Stay, he said. So I did. The light from his flashlight cast long shadows. You scared of the dark? He asked. Not the dark, I answered. He tilted his head. Then what? I almost answered. But the silence between us was already saying everything I wouldn't. He stepped closer. Just one step. Then said, we'll get the lights back on. Just not yet. I nodded. Because I understood. The dark wasn't hiding anything anymore. It was the one place nothing had to be hidden. That night, I lay awake. Sheets tangled. Breath uneven. I closed my eyes and saw only the space between us. The words not said. The distance not crossed, but not ignored either. It wasn't about desire. Not in the way I used to understand it. It was something quieter. Like waiting on the edge of something I didn't name. And I knew this. I couldn't go backward. And I wouldn't stay in place. During the day, I am a wife. I fold towels into neat squares. I water the basil by the window. I reply to Tom's texts with heart emojis and updates about the weather. At night, I become something else. Not a lover. Not quite. But a shadow of her. Someone whose mind replays the moments that lingered too long in silence. Someone who lies in the dark replaying moments that never fully crossed the line, but scorched everything around it. Dylan, is still here. Still in this house. Still sitting across from me at dinner, chewing slowly, like he's keeping himself from speaking. I wear loose sweaters. I avoid mirrors. I keep my hands busy. It doesn't help. Because when he enters a room, I feel it in my spine. Because when he says my name, something inside me folds. Your husband called, Dylan said one morning, dropping a grocery bag on the counter. I didn't turn to face him. Everything okay? He says he misses you. The pause between his words was sharp enough to draw blood. I forced a smile. That's nice. Dylan didn't respond. Just started unpacking the bag. Bananas, coffee filters, a loaf of bread. Ordinary things. Anchors. And then he said, Do you miss him? I dropped a spoon. Breath caught in my chest for reasons I couldn't name. It clanged against the sink. Too loud. Too sudden. I bent to pick it up, heart beating where it shouldn't. I do, I said, but my voice didn't sound like mine. Dylan didn't look at me. He just said, No, you don't. That night, I lay awake, as always. Listening. For footsteps. For the creak in the stairs. For the shift in air that always came when he moved through the hallway. But it was quiet. And that silence burned more than any word he could have said. The next morning, I tried to be different. Brighter. Warmer. Distant. I asked him about his plans for the fall. He stared at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. You keep pretending, he said. Like nothing's changed. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. He stepped closer. The space between us shifted in a way I couldn't ignore. Not touching, but so close it hurt. You can lie to yourself if you want, he murmured. But don't lie to me. I didn't answer. I walked away. And hated myself for not running. That afternoon, I sat in front of the mirror for too long. Not doing anything. Just watching my own reflection. I tilted my head slightly. Touched my lips. Wondered how I appeared to someone who wasn't supposed to notice at all. Something dangerous. That evening, I had dinner with a friend. She laughed about work, about traffic, about her husband's snoring. I nodded, smiled, laughed when she did. Inside, I was screaming. I didn't know what I was screaming for, but it filled my chest, pressed against my ribs, coiled in my throat. When I got home, the house was too quiet. The lights dimmed low, the air thick. I called for him lightly, as if it were just another small favor. He answered from the basement. "I'm down here," he said. His voice, it wasn't louder, but it was heavier, like it carried something we'd both stopped naming. Later that night, I passed his door. I shouldn't have stopped, but I did. It was slightly ajar. The light inside low. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, shirtless, barefoot. He didn't see me, but I saw him, and my breath caught, because he looked not young, not quite older, but paused in something unfinished. Someone unfinished. And somehow that made it worse. The next morning, I made pancakes. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to pretend we were still pretending. He walked in, hair damp, shirt wrinkled, paused at the door, then came closer. "They smell good," he said. I nodded, flipping one too fast. It tore at the edge. "I didn't sleep," he added. "Me neither." I couldn't look at him, because if I did, I'd say something I couldn't take back. He stepped beside me, reached for a plate. Our fingers met briefly, enough to make the moment hold its breath. For 1 second too long. Then I pulled away, and he let me. But the air between us had already changed again. It happened 2 nights later. The power went out. Again. But this time it felt deliberate. I was in the living room when everything blinked into darkness. No thunder. No storm. Just silence. And dark. I froze. And then his voice, low and steady. "It's okay. I'll check." I stood still, hands gripping the edge of the table. "Stay there," he said. But I didn't. I followed him to the basement. Again. Same as before. Only everything was different. He opened the panel, flicked switches. Nothing. Then he turned to me. "I can't fix it tonight," he said. His voice had changed. There was no pretense in it now. "It's okay," I whispered. But it wasn't. Because he stepped closer. And I didn't move. Because he reached for my hand. And I let him. Because the moment pulled us together like something inevitable, not chosen, but felt. "I've tried," he said, voice shaking now. "To be good. To stay away." I swallowed. "I know. But I can't keep doing this. Watching you pretend." My heart thudded in my throat. "I don't know how to stop," I whispered. He stepped even closer. So close, I could feel his breath. It burned. "You don't have to stop," he said. And then, silence. The kind that isn't quiet at all. I don't remember who touched who first. I just remember the moment everything gave in. The moment the air between us collapsed. The moment I stopped pretending I was still the same person I used to be. It didn't feel like a choice. More like a tide that had been rising for too long. His mouth was too close. My hand found the back of his neck. I don't remember breathing. Everything disappeared. Everything else became distant. The blanket between us, gone. The distance we'd guarded, erased. It was not soft. It was not gentle. It was inevitable. The next morning, I was already awake when the sun came in. I lay still, fingers on my stomach, skin still humming. The room smelled different, as if the silence had shifted. And the truth was, I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. But part of me had already crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I don't remember the moment he left the room. I just remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the guilt to arrive like a train I heard in the distance. But it never came. Only quiet. Not absence. Not numbness. Just stillness, the kind that made me feel, for the first time in a very long while, like I had survived something. The bed was still warm where he had been. My body felt like it had crossed into something irreversible. My breath came slower than usual, like my body was trying to catch up to the reality it had finally stepped into. I pulled the blanket over me and closed my eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the panic I thought would come. I felt something far more dangerous. Peace. I stayed like that for hours, drifting in and out of sleep, my skin still tingled from the tension I hadn't yet named. I got up only when the sun changed angles and the light on the wall shifted from gold to gray. I moved through the house barefoot, slowly, as if it were a place I hadn't yet learned how to live in. The kitchen felt unfamiliar. My hand trembled slightly as I poured a glass of water. I drank it too fast. The cold burned down my throat like a reminder. Then my phone buzzed. Just once. I thought it might be him, but it wasn't. It was Tom. The message was short. No punctuation. Emma, I know I saw everything. I'm not angry. I love someone else. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. My hand tightened around the glass. I read it again. And again. Saw everything. I turned slowly toward the living room, scanning it without meaning to. The ceiling. The corners. The shelf where Tom always kept his things. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw it. Small. Black. Tucked behind the curtain rod. The camera. He had been watching. Maybe from the very beginning. Maybe from before he even left. He hadn't asked. Hadn't confronted. He had just waited. As if he had known it was only a matter of time. A strange noise rose in my throat. Not a sob. Not a scream. Something more like laughter. Broken. Unshaped. I covered my mouth and sat down on the couch, shaking, not from fear, but from the slow realization that everything I had tried to hide from myself was now fully seen. And nothing exploded. Nothing shattered. There was no fire. Just a long, soft exhale. The marriage was already dead. We had both simply been waiting for someone to say it out loud. That evening I made dinner. For myself. Simple pasta. No garlic. No wine. I played a record I hadn't touched in years. Something soft, wordless. I ate at the counter instead of the table. I didn't turn on the overhead light. Only a lamp in the corner. It felt like the house was breathing again. Dylan came in later, after his walk. His eyes searched mine for something I didn't try to hide. I handed him the phone, showed him the message. He read it, then handed it back. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but no sound came. I wasn't ready for decisions. Not yet. I was still learning how to stand in this new air. He reached across the counter and touched my wrist, lightly, like he was checking for a pulse. I looked at his hand, then back at him. "I need time," I said. He nodded, then stepped back. He didn't sleep in the house that night. I think he knew I needed space to understand what my life was now. Not because of what we had done, but because of everything that had led me there. Every silence. Every avoidance. Every soft betrayal. The days that followed were slow and shapeless. I moved gently. Spoke rarely. I didn't tell anyone. Not about Dylan. Not about Tom. I didn't return his messages either. I think he understood. A week later, the papers came. Tom didn't ask for a fight. He didn't want one. The terms were fair. Clean. Cold. I signed them without hesitation. When Dylan came back, it wasn't dramatic. No speech. No declarations. We just sat in the living room, a quiet space between us. He said, "I won't stay if it's going to break you." And I said, "It already broke me. That's how I know I'm free." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. That night, we didn't touch. We didn't need to. We lay side by side, not tangled, just present. His breath near mine. My hand brushing the edge of the sheet where his body ended. I wasn't in love with him. That's not what this was. I was in love with the version of myself that had finally stopped waiting to disappear. In the morning, he left again. This time for real. He said he needed to figure things out. He didn't ask for anything. He hugged me like someone saying goodbye to a version of himself he didn't need to carry anymore, and was now willing to carry the ashes with care. He said, "I hope you don't forget who you are now." And I said, "I won't." He walked out the door without looking back. And I didn't follow. That afternoon, I cleaned the house slowly, room by room, not to erase anything, just to feel it with new hands. I opened windows. I took down the curtain rod, removed the camera, placed it in a drawer. I didn't throw it away. I wanted to keep it, not as a threat, not as a memory, but as proof that even when I was being watched, I still chose what I chose. Later, I stood in front of the mirror, touched my cheek, my lips, my own collarbone, not to admire, not to mourn, just to say, I'm still here. And finally, I am mine.